Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Sunday, July 5th, 2026, and you're listening to Alex's News. Today in Riverside, we are looking at a high of 91 degrees and a low of 65.5 degrees. Since we are still in the midst of the Independence Day holiday weekend, please be sure to stay safe and hydrated while you enjoy any outdoor festivities. In today's episode, we are looking into the various factors contributing to the current instability within the United States economy. We will also examine the specific diplomatic efforts a United States president utilized to secure the release of a pastor from China. We will be discussing these important developments and covering several other stories throughout the program as well. There is plenty to get to on today's edition of Alex's News. Stay tuned. Good morning, everyone. As we start this Sunday, July 5th, our top story is the American economy. And it's a rocky picture. High inflation, a cooling job market, and shaky confidence, much of it tied to war overseas. Ethan, thanks for joining us. What are people feeling day to day?
Thanks, Grace. According to reports from the Associated Press and AOL, Americans are really feeling this at the gas station and the grocery store. Those everyday trips are where rising costs hit hardest. The Conference Board did report that its Consumer Confidence Index rose slightly, up 0.6 of a point to 91.2 in June. But even with that little bump, people just aren't feeling secure right now.
A rise sounds like good news. Why isn't it?
Well, context is everything here. That 91.2 reading is still well below last year's figure of 95.2. And it's far below where we were before the pandemic, when this index regularly topped 120. So a tiny monthly gain doesn't erase a much bigger, longer slide. Kandorium notes attitudes improved a bit this month because gas prices dipped, but the overall outlook stays, quote, mostly negative by historical standards, end quote.
You mentioned inflation. Where does that stand?
Inflation is really at the center of this gloom, Grace. It's currently at a 3-year high. According to a Nashville mortgage rates report cited through one of our research agents, inflation is on track to close the first half of 2026 at its highest level since 2022. That means the last time prices climbed this fast was about 4 years ago. And here's the part that stings. That environment has pushed down inflation-adjusted incomes for a lot of American families.
So even if paychecks grow, they don't stretch as far.
Exactly right. When inflation runs faster than your raise, you effectively earn less. Your dollar simply buys fewer groceries, less gas, fewer basics. That's why people feel squeezed, even if the headline numbers show some jobs and some spending. It's the gap between what you make and what things cost that's driving this frustration.
Let's get to the root of it. This all connects to the conflict with Iran, right?
It does, and that's the thread running through everything. The Associated Press and AOL report that a war between the United States and Iran began in late February. That conflict disrupted the flow of crude oil out of the Persian Gulf. When that supply gets choked off, oil and gas prices spike, and that ripples outward. It accelerated inflation, it drove up bond yields, and it pushed mortgage rates higher.
Where do things stand with that war right now?
It's a fragile calm, Grace. One of our research agents reports there's a 60-day memorandum of understanding, a ceasefire, and the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Both are still active as of early July, following what's been called a stand-down agreement. So on paper, tensions have eased. But this all comes right after some very tense moments in late June. That could have gone the other way.
What happened in late June?
There were skirmishes, and they were serious. We saw Iranian drone attacks on oil corridors, and then retaliatory United States strikes on Iranian missile and radar sites. So this ceasefire isn't coming from a place of trust. It's coming after real fighting. And the language from both sides suggests everyone's still on edge, even with the guns quieted for now.
Is either side making threats that worry you?
Yes, and that's why analysts call this precarious. The Iranian military command is asserting that tankers must follow Iranian protocols or face what they call a forceful response. And Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Kalibaf warned of, quote, proportionate actions, end quote, if United States and Israeli commitments aren't met. So the shipping lanes are open, oil is moving again, but the whole arrangement could shift fast if either side feels the deal is broken.
And that uncertainty keeps prices jumpy at home.
That's the connection people should understand. Even a rumor of trouble in the Strait of Hormuz can move oil markets in a day. Traders price in the risk before anything actually happens. So as long as the situation stays this delicate, American drivers and shoppers stay exposed to sudden swings, no matter what the ceasefire says on paper.
Let's turn to jobs. How is the labor market holding up?
It's cooling, and pretty clearly. The Labor Department reported that employers added only 57,000 jobs in June. To put that in perspective, that's less than half of what we saw the previous month. And it gets a bit worse, because those solid job gains that were previously reported for April and May were revised lower. So the recent trend is softer than we first believed.
But didn't the unemployment rate actually go down?
It did, technically, and this is where you have to read the fine print. The unemployment rate dipped to 4.2% from 4.3% in May. That sounds like improvement. But the Labor Department noted the decline was largely because discouraged workers simply stopped looking for jobs. Once people give up the search, they're no longer counted as unemployed. So the rate fell for the wrong reason.
So a lower number can actually hide a weaker market.
Precisely. It's one of those statistics that can mislead you if you take it at face value. Fewer people actively hunting for work isn't a sign of strength. It's often a sign folks have lost hope of finding something. That's why economists look past the headline rate and dig into who's dropping out and why.
What else are you seeing beneath the surface?
The Bureau of Labor Statistics released more data from May that fills in the picture. Job openings actually held higher than expected at 7.6 million, which is a bright spot. But layoffs rose, and gross hiring dipped to 5.17 million, down from 5.26 million in April. That hiring slowdown matters. Back during the boom from mid-2021 to mid-2023, gross monthly hiring regularly topped 6 million, so we've fallen off sharply from that pace.
Is there any good news in the jobs data?
There is, actually. The Labor Department reported that new applications for unemployment benefits fell by 1,000 down to 215,000 for the week ending June 27th, which was just over a week ago. That was lower than the 225,000 that FactSet had forecast. Fewer new claims suggests employers aren't rushing to cut staff en masse. So while hiring is slowing, we're not seeing a wave of fresh layoffs hitting the door.
Let's finish with housing. What's happening with mortgage rates?
The housing market has been caught up in all this volatility from the Iran conflict, Grace. Freddie Mac reported that the benchmark 30-year fixed-rate mortgage fell slightly to 6.43%, down from 6.49% the previous week. And that's actually lower than the 6.67% average we saw a year ago. So there's a little relief for buyers compared to last summer.
Little relief. But rates are still high, aren't they?
They are. And here's the catch. Rates have largely hovered around 6.5% ever since the conflict began back in February. That's because of the same pressure we talked about earlier, the war pushing up bond yields. Mortgage rates tend to track those yields closely. So until the geopolitical picture settles for good, would-be homebuyers are likely stuck near these elevated levels, even with the occasional small dip.
So it really all loops back to that conflict overseas.
It truly does. That's the big takeaway from all of this. The war that started in late February is the common thread linking your gas prices, your grocery bill, mortgage rates, and even the mood of the country. The ceasefire is holding for now, but it's fragile. And until it feels permanent, this instability is likely to stick around and keep families feeling that pinch.
Really helpful breakdown on a complicated morning. Ethan, thank you so much for walking us through it.
My pleasure, Grace. Happy to be here.
That's the state of the economy this July 5th. We'll have more when there's news to share. Stay with us. Welcome back. This next story is one of faith, family, and diplomacy playing out across two countries. Chloe, tell us who Pastor Ezra Jin Mingri is.
Good morning, Grace. Pastor Ezra Jin Mingri is a 57-year-old Chinese pastor who founded the prominent underground Zion Church in Beijing. On July 3, 2026, just 2 days ago, he arrived in Los Angeles after being released from a Chinese prison. According to the Free Press, Jin had spent 266 days in detention. His family described his release as, quote, a miracle, end quote.
266 days. What did his arrival here in the States mean for his family?
It was deeply emotional, Grace. He landed on the eve of America's 250th birthday, and he reunited with his wife, Anna Liu, and his daughter and son-in-law, Grace and Bill Drexel. What makes this remarkable is the passage of time. It was the first time in 8 years that Jin had seen his wife, and the first time in 6 years he'd seen his daughter.
8 years apart from his own wife. I understand there was a new family member waiting too?
That's right. Upon his arrival, he met his grandson for the first time, a little boy named Ezra. And here's a detail that carries real weight. Baby Ezra was born on June 4th, a date that coincides with the anniversary of the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. That very event is what originally inspired Jin's conversion to Christianity, so the timing feels almost providential to the family.
That's a powerful connection. Now let's back up. Why was he detained in the first place?
Jin was detained in October 2025 in what's been described as one of the largest crackdowns on a single church in decades. This has been covered by several major outlets, including NPR, ABC News, and the Associated Press. The Free Press characterized the charges against him as the, quote, crime of practicing and preaching his faith, end quote. Other sources noted he was specifically accused of, quote, illegally using information networks, end quote.
Was he the only one taken in that crackdown?
No, and this is where the reporting varies a bit. Some reports state he was detained alongside 17 other church leaders, which would total 18 people. But other reports indicate that as many as 30 leaders were detained during overnight raids. Either way, it was a sweeping operation aimed at the church's leadership, and it signaled just how seriously Beijing viewed this congregation.
Tell us more about the Zion Church itself. What makes it so significant?
The Zion Church was founded by Jin back in 2007, and it's one of the largest unregistered, so-called house churches in China. To understand why that matters, you have to understand the politics. The ruling Communist Party is officially atheist and views organized religion as a potential threat to its power. So it requires believers to worship only in registered congregations that the state can monitor.
And Jin's church refused to register?
Exactly. Pastor Jin's church defied those restrictions specifically to ensure that God remained the, quote, sole head, end quote, of the church, not the state. What's striking is Jin's personal courage here. He had previously brought his family to the U.S. after authorities targeted the Zion Church in 2018. But he chose to return to China despite knowing full well the risks he faced.
So he willingly went back. How did his release finally come about?
It appears to be the result of high-level diplomatic intervention. According to NPR and ABC News, the release came less than 2 months after President Donald Trump raised Jin's case during a state visit to Beijing in May 2026. On his return flight, Trump told reporters that Chinese leader Xi Jinping said he would, quote, strongly consider, end quote, the pastor's case. And within weeks, Jin was on a plane to Los Angeles.
What has the family said about the role those leaders played?
In a statement, Jin's family thanked President Trump directly. They also asserted that the release could not have happened without the direct intervention of Xi Jinping. And they expressed hope that this serves as a signal of a, quote, positive turn, end quote, for people of faith in China and for U.S.-China relations. It was a gracious statement that credited both sides of the diplomacy.
How are observers reading this move by Beijing?
The Wall Street Journal characterized it as a, quote, surprise gesture of goodwill, end quote, following U.S. pressure. But I'd add a note of caution here, Grace. Both the White House and the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs did not immediately respond to requests for comment about that causal link. So while the timing strongly suggests diplomacy worked, neither government has officially confirmed the connection.
That's an important distinction. Does this mean the broader crisis is resolved?
Not at all, and human rights advocates are very clear on that point. Maya Wong of Human Rights Watch noted on X that at least 8 members of the Zion Church remain detained in China. She called for their immediate freedom. So while Jin's family celebrates, other families are still waiting for their loved ones to come home. The crackdown's effects are ongoing.
You mentioned Trump raised other cases too. What happened there?
Yes, the diplomatic efforts in May 2026 highlighted other casualties of Beijing's crackdown. Trump noted that while she was open to considering the pastor's release, another case would be much harder. That's the case of 78-year-old imprisoned Hong Kong activist and publisher Jimmy Lai. Lai received a 20-year sentence in February, and she said his case would be, quote, a tough one, end quote.
So real progress on one front, but significant hurdles remaining on others.
That's the picture exactly, Grace. Pastor Jin's release is being celebrated as a genuine breakthrough, both for his family and as a possible sign of warming relations. But advocates want people to remember it's one release among many detentions. The story of religious freedom in China is far from over, and cases like Jimmy Lai's show just how difficult the road ahead may be.
A moving story with much still unfolding. Chloe, thank you for walking us through all of it.
My pleasure, Grace. Thanks for having me.
Here are some other headlines. Starting with some high-flying tension in Eastern Europe, Ukrainian drones really decided to oil their machinery this past Saturday, July 4th, launching a large-scale attack on Russian oil facilities by the Baltic Sea. President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that these strikes were aimed at port infrastructure to drain Russia's energy revenues, including a hit on Kronstadt, a military target located more than 850 kilometers from Ukraine's border. It was a real whirlwind of activity, as the Russian Defense Ministry claims they intercepted a staggering 389 combat drones overnight, with Governor Alexander Drozdenko reporting 72 of those were shot down over the Leningrad region. Governor Alexander Beglov says there were no casualties, but the ripple effect reached Finland, where the public broadcaster YLE reports that temporary aviation and maritime restrictions were imposed in the eastern Gulf of Finland to keep things on an even keel. Meanwhile, there is a tug-of-war over territory. Russia claims to have captured the eastern Ukrainian city of Kostiantynivka in the Donetsk region, but President Zelensky and the General Staff have denied this, insisting the city remains firmly under Kyiv's control. Turning to the Middle East, where the atmosphere is heavy with grief and hostility. On Sunday, July 5th, funeral prayers for the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei were held at the Imam Khomeini Mosalla Grand Mosque in Tehran. The service was led by 97-year-old Shiite cleric Ayatollah Jafar Subhani and attended by a who's who of Iranian leadership, including President Masoud Pezeshkian, Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Khalibaf, Revolutionary Guard head General Ahmad Vahidi, and Quds Force leader Esmail Qaani, along with the late leader's sons Masoud, Maysam, and Mustafa. However, there was a glaring hole in the guest list. The new supreme leader, Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei, was a no-show. He is believed to be playing a game of hide-and-seek after being reportedly wounded in the February 28th airstrike that took his father's life. The event also took a sharp turn when poet and MC Mohammed Rassouli decided to stir the pot, making the first direct threat to President Trump's life by asking the crowd why the most bastard man in the world is still alive. This sentiment was echoed in graffiti and posters calling for the deaths of both Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Across the globe, President Trump was celebrating a milestone, delivering a speech in Washington, D.C. for the 250th anniversary of America's founding. In a bold claim, the president asserted that the United States military has completely wiped out Iran's military, leaving them with nothing left to fight with. And finally, in a quick political update from South America, Keiko Fujimori, daughter of a convicted former leader, has stepped up to the plate and become the president-elect of Peru. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Opus 4.8, Gemini Pro 3.1, Gemini Flash 3, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.